So
Hi.
how are you?
Hi, everyone. Like Aaron said, my name is Kisei, or Amy. I trained at Great Vow Zen Monastery for about 12 years. I was ordained as a priest. I trained as a monastic. So my background is very much steeped in the Zen tradition, which I love. It's a non-dual tradition. It's a very inclusive tradition. And my teachers were very inclusive in the way that they really appreciated and understood the Dharma. So we had Vipassana teachers come through yearly, and we had the Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha come through yearly, and we had a number of Vajrayana teachers come through in the last 10 years that I was there. So I really have a lot of influences from these different teachers, and have continued on my own path, connecting mostly with the Zen and then the Dzogchen lineages, and then also supported by psychological modalities, which my teachers did a lot of Gestalt and parts work as a supplement to help us understand how to work with our minds. I think they had just an appreciation that the Dharma is coming in this context. We received the Dharma from Japan, and there was a set way of practicing Dharma, and then it came to the States, and when they were practicing in the 70s, people's psychology is just a lot different, and how to meet the complexity of modern life and just the ways that we've been conditioned. So that element has always been an important element in just my training, and I'm continuing to enrich there. And I feel like I've learned a lot about compassion through those modalities as well, and very much maps onto Dharma practice. So I want to give folks an opportunity to introduce yourselves, but I also know that we're recording. So maybe the best way to do that is we can just write in the chat, if you could put your name and where you're from, and the chat's not going to be available on the YouTube, so you're free. And it will give me a sense of who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about what your Dharma practice background is, what style of meditation you may have learned, or what your practice is when you do meditation. That will give me an idea of what maybe to address as we go forward in this retreat. I'm appreciating just the intimacy of the retreat right now, so it definitely can be a little more catered to who's here. Great, so much rich practice experience. Thanks, everyone. So I also want to open the retreat space. We're on Zoom. If we were in person, what I would do, or what we would do together, is create sacred space. Often the way that we do that in my tradition is by lighting an altar. So I'm going to light a candle. If you want to do something, some way of acknowledging, bringing presence to your space, you're welcome to do that. And I'm also going to offer incense. And the altar in the Zen tradition often has an image of the Buddha, or an image of compassion or wisdom, represented by the Bodhisattvas Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri. And what we're doing is acknowledging and calling in the awakening energies. and bringing our intention to realize those energies that don't belong to anyone, but can be realized within ourselves. Also on the altar, often flowers and food offerings and water offerings, and a lot of space. And so that the elements are represented on the altar as the foundation of physical reality, also emotional reality, like kind of the building blocks of what we know of as reality. But also the manifestation of beauty is on the altar, and space is on the altar. And you can think of that as just an inner reflection of our own minds. Like Dharma practice helps us realize and bring forward the beautiful qualities of the heart that are innate to us. They're not opposite to the more painful emotions, which are also part and welcome on the altar. So we're calling forward whatever wants to show up today, to be healed, to be transformed, to be awakened. And that's really a beautiful aspect of just bringing time and space to come together and practice together. And also lighting the altar is a way of remembering our interconnection. So who we think we are is so much bigger and more mysterious. We're the coming together of causes and conditions on many different levels of reality: material, physical, emotional, spiritual. And this lighting of the altar is also an opportunity to connect with your intention for this time together. And that can be like what brought you to this retreat, but also your intention for why you practice Dharma. And just remembering that, affirming that in your heart. And then holding space, opening your awareness to the space in your room, grounding into your body. Feeling what comes alive when you remember your intention. And then also letting your intention be held. In the Zen tradition, we really acknowledge the ancestors who've opened this path up before us. And whatever helper beings. So we talk about bodhisattvas, which represent these powerful energies of compassion and determination and fearlessness and wisdom. So calling those forward, if you have a connection to them in some way. And I also like to make space to acknowledge the land that you're on, we're on. The United States is unceded land of Indigenous peoples. Perhaps just connecting to that for a moment. And even acknowledging all that has come together to allow us to practice Dharma together. To be here together now. It really, truly is precious. And bowing is a form of gratitude. So we would bow at the altar as we begin retreat. I wanted to give just a little bit of a framing for this retreat, a talk on the subject that we'll be exploring. And then a little bit of the breakdown of the retreat, so you have a sense of where we're headed. So the title of this retreat is Lotus in the Fire, Awakening into Your Life. And I wanted to offer a retreat that helps us connect to practices that we can do anytime, anywhere, and affirms that our life, whatever the coming together of causes and conditions that have made your life, is your path, and that you can find sustenance in the Dharma by truly walking your life, and bringing this Dharma practice into every aspect of your life. I sometimes think of Dharma practice as like when we find the Dharma, it's a matter of like bringing it into the center of our lives and then allowing everything else that we do to come from that. And when we do that, we can feel most in harmony with our lives. And the question can be, well, what is practice? Because practice can take so many different expressions. I've felt limited over the course of my life, thinking that Dharma practice is only the sitting on the cushion. While retreat practice is so important, it's really how we're working with our minds and our hearts in our relationships too, and in the ways that we show up in all of our interests and all of our activities. The Dharma practice is many things. And I think as we practice longer and longer, we come to see that. It's a path that keeps opening up. It's a path of self-realization, of coming to know who and what we are, which honestly continues to get deeper and more subtle as we hone this capacity of awareness. And the inclusivity of awareness continues to get more refined, and just how much can be included in who we think we are, and how we can come to love that, and that love extending beyond what we think of as me to the entire world and creation. Dharma practice is a path of acceptance, of deep acceptance, of appreciation for our life, even the challenging and difficult parts. It's a path of freedom. It's a path of love, like deeply grounded in compassion. It's a path of healing, of transformation, of awakening. And it's also a path of humility, of becoming truly human, as one of my teachers often says. And I just love that. It's becoming truly who we are. And so there's an aspect of Dharma that's very expansive, and we can know a oneness that is free of ego identification. And we also can come to really appreciate the uniqueness of what we bring to that. And so oneness is inclusive of so much diversity. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about emptiness today. So emptiness, are folks familiar with that word, emptiness? It's a word that you hear in Dharma context, and it's a deep and multifaceted word or concept or even experience. One of my teachers talks about emptiness as pure potential energy. Other teachers refer to it as spaciousness or boundlessness. Literally, the Sanskrit word for emptiness is shunyata, and many translators say there just isn't an English word for that concept that really captures it. That word can literally mean zero. And so another way that I really appreciate, and this is similar to pure potential energy, is coming down to the zero, the ground of being. which we talk a lot about in Dharma practice. It's like when we're able to come to the zero, and then we see that everything emerges from the same source. We're coming back to the source of life. And that's something we can make contact with in every moment. It's like in Zen, we talk about the backward step. Take the backward step. That's one of Dogen Zenji's instructions for meditation, for Zazen practice. And when we are able to do that, there's an experience of non-separation. Like often when we feel limited in our lives and in Dharma practice, we're just identified with some belief or some thought or some story about ourselves. And it could be a deeply habitual conditioned story that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. So it's not necessarily like, oh, it's just a story. But like that's what limits us is these kinds of condensing around certain beliefs. So in Dharma practice, we can learn to open. And when we are able to do that, even just a little bit, those beliefs, those thoughts, those emotions that were kind of condensed around have life to breathe, to move, to transform. And we can have an inner sense of like, oh, that's not all of who I am. That's just a part of who I am. And there can be more breath and inclusivity and acceptance and love for those parts that often feel like stuck parts. So I wanted to explore some meditation techniques for opening to emptiness, getting a taste of the different aspects of emptiness. One aspect that I want to focus on to begin with is the quality of openness or spaciousness. And then we'll move into the quality of compassion, and then bring in the quality of inquiry, and then expression and creativity, which are all this like dynamic aspects of emptiness, showing that emptiness isn't like a fixed state of nothingness, but it's an alive state of living possibility. So let's take a moment and well, first I'd like to see if anyone has any questions about that. Anything I said. And like Aaron said, you can type the question directly to him in the chat and then he can ask it. Or if you feel comfortable and you don't mind being on YouTube to ask your question, you can ask it. Either's fine. Well, let's take a little stretch break. If you need to use the restroom, we'll take like a 3-minute break. And then we'll come back for the first period of meditation and we'll explore openness. So as you come back from the break, you can set up for the meditation session. And just bringing your body into stillness. And sometimes that means letting your body move a little bit to find that stillness. Because the stillness that we rest in zazen or in meditation is an alive, relaxed stillness. So if you've been active today or sitting behind your computer today, you might want to just do a little stretching and take a few deep breaths and just let your body unwind and settle. And for this practice of openness, first start by connecting with whatever practice you use. That helps you come into presence. And a couple of modifications, just slight modifications you can make for this session, if you'd like, try them on, is to allow your senses to be open. Now, our senses are always open, but sometimes when we're practicing meditation, especially forms of concentration, we might really highlight one sense and allow the other senses to really retreat. And so for this, if concentration is, or shamatha is one of your base practices, see if you can hold the anchor lightly, the method lightly, and allow your senses to be open. And just meaning that the ears are hearing sound, the eyes are seeing color and shape and space, the body is feeling sensations, the breath is breathing. Just completely allowing the senses to do what they do. And then allowing your attention to rest in your method. And the second modification is to let your eyes be open. And for the first maybe 3 minutes, if you want to have your eyes closed, that's fine. I'd like to invite open-eyed meditation, where you just allow your eyes to gaze either straight ahead or at a 45-degree angle. And allow a soft gaze where you're not really focused on anything, but you're letting in the light, the color, the space. And the third modification is an attitude of allowing. Welcome. Meaning simply that whatever is happening, allow it to happen. As you're connecting with your method, also allowing your body to settle allowing your breath to settle into the breath. And whenever you notice there's kind of a tightening around a thought, an emotion, an idea, a body sensation, even the desire to do this right, practice opening the hand of thought, just opening that grasp, and not forcing anything, but just inviting an openness. And for this period of meditation, you don't need to make anything happen or get anything or figure anything out. And just being with yourself, as yourself. If you're noticing any tightening or grasping, invite openness. And just open. Senses open. Affirming the openness of the body, the openness of the mind, the openness of awareness. And the openness of the heart. There may be places of tension within the body, places of resistance. And can you meet them with a quality of welcome? Can you meet them from the perspective of openness? And sinking into the openness that's already there, already here. The openness of awareness itself. That's all inclusive. All embracing. Allowing yourself, your body, thoughts, emotions to be held by that openness. As the sky holds the weather, allowing it to move through. openness, welcoming everything that comes towards you. And so you can take a moment and stretch. And we'll take another break here just to put us onto the schedule of being ready at the top of the hour in case anyone new wants to join. So we'll take a little break if you need to use the bathroom or go outside or get a drink of water. Just, give yourself a little massage and just staying in this investigation of openness as you do more activity and maybe the mind gets a little more active. And we'll come back at the top of the hour. Welcome back. So I'm curious if anyone would be willing to share just anything you noticed from that instruction of openness, that exploration of openness, anything that came up in the last session. And you can write it in the chat if you don't want to speak out loud. Yeah, Max.
Yeah, I was just noticing, and I mentioned the Zen Center here before, and it's also eyes open. And I'm being surprised each time by, I keep thinking, oh, if my eyes are open, especially eyes looking outside, I'll be distracted by what I can see. But it's been an important moment of realizing how much I can still pay attention to mental phenomenon with the eyes open, how clear those can still be, thoughts, images, and so it's a good reminder, because normally I have my eyes open during other daily activities, so those are also times when there can be this kind of attention, maybe a little more and more. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for naming that. That's one of the reasons why we meditate with our eyes open in the Zen tradition, is that the appreciation, and this is one of the reasons what I love about the non-dual schools, is just the appreciation that what we're cultivating in Zazen isn't just dependent on the causes and conditions of stillness or silence, but can be found in activity. And that's one way of just like verifying that, is like to have your eyes open connects you to just that state of mind of awareness, of alertness that we have throughout the day. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to share about practicing openness? Anything that came up in the last session? Any questions or challenges? Yeah, Aaron?
This isn't particular to this retreat so much, but I'd be curious about your thoughts, because I've been practicing some shikantaza, like open awareness, on retreats the last few that I've done. I find like there's I seem to almost always run into a little narrator that says, this isn't working, nothing's happening, this isn't real meditation. And then it kind of gradually, like, best way I could describe it is the narrator just spazzes out and like doesn't really know what to do with me not really meditating, and then eventually something else happens. But does that like, does that happen? Like, do you know what I'm talking about?
So what is the eventually something else happens? Just that it gets tired, or?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's basically every time. I think I'm gradually developing faith that it really does something useful. And then it also, there's this constant investigation of like faith and what practice actually is, and I don't feel like I'm checking any boxes. And usually after a while, that's a good question, what happens? I think it gets bored.
Yeah.
And then there's just content. It just spews content for hours, and eventually that gets bored.
So like not like giving it a space to speak and do its thing, but not engaging it and not pushing it away, it eventually stops or changes. That's interesting. I mean, I'll say something more to that voice, because that voice is active. But that is actually the spirit of shikantaza, and that's where this experiential faith comes in. And a meditation practice, and we're using this word shikantaza, which is a Zen tradition word for a style of meditation where you basically do nothing. You sit in open presence. So one of the switches that we make in practicing shikantaza is moving from being identified with thought to being aware. And then you sit in awareness. And whatever happens, you just allow whatever is happening to happen. And that technique is really a technique of non-technique. In the Dzogchen tradition, that same practice is called non-meditation. Because it's really emphasizing like you're not doing anything. And another teacher from the Tibetan tradition, Talopa, he has these like the 6 guidelines for practicing non-meditation, and it's don't think about the future, don't think about the past, don't try to figure anything out, don't try to get anything. Don't push anything away, just rest. And I mean, all those, they're framed in the negative, but it's just like kind of unwinding all of the habits of what we're used to doing and how we're used to succeeding, and reminding us that open presence is our natural state. And so if you disidentify with all of the thoughts or habits of mind, and that disidentifying is just taking, like I said in the beginning, just taking that backward step, then those narratives only have so much fuel, and they have the fuel of our attention. So if we're buying into them a little bit, they'll keep going. But as we step back and identify more with the field of awareness, the ground of awareness, which I'm calling emptiness, then those thoughts don't have as much momentum. They are only fed by our attention. So they'll change, they'll transform. And that's the spirit of Shikantaza, is just continuously affirming the ground and developing this faith in what we sometimes call the nature of mind, in open presence, in loving awareness. We can call it many different things, but it's like the core of who we are, which can never be taken away or covered up. Is only covered up when we believe in the thoughts, the narratives, the stories. It's a really, I mean, in the Zen tradition, the Dzogchen traditions, it's an advanced practice. And it's not like, it can be, I think sometimes if we're practicing it, and that's the only method that we're using, it can take a lot of time to really build that level of faith. And sometimes it can be easy to mistake certain thoughts as like, oh, I'm practicing Shikantaza, or certain identifications with the watcher or the witness. So it's a very, very subtle practice, and doing meditation techniques like concentration and inquiry can support a deepening into Shikantaza. But some people, that's all they do. And that's the only practice that they do. And it is a practice of deep, deep, deep faith. And it's like Erin was sharing, it takes like sometimes a whole day or even a whole week to really like be the space for which all of these reactions are happening. And it's especially if you're used to achieving certain states in meditation, this is like, it cancels all of that. It's like, nah, like that's not ultimate. That's still based on conditions. That's still based on conditions, and just shows like the habits of mind and the fixed beliefs that we have even around practice. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it's a really interesting question. And it gets to like one of the core questions in Dharma practice that I think we all face is like, how much effort should I make? And I don't think there's an answer to that one. Yeah, thanks, Erin. And welcome to Lydia. We're just doing a question and answer from the last period. And if anyone else has any questions that you'd like to bring forward, and they don't have to be specifically about anything that we've covered. If you just have a practice question, can bring it up. We'll have a few Q&As throughout this retreat. And you're welcome again to write it in the chat or speak it out. Well, I want to shift gears now to compassion. And like I said, compassion is part of this ground of being. It's like a warm, loving presence is something that's at the core of all of us, and we all have access to. And that's a quality within all of us that is just naturally healing and attuning and aligning. And it's something that we can come to know for ourselves. In the Buddhist tradition, compassion is really the seed for all of the other teachings. Um, Without compassion, and it's often stated in terms of what we call the bodhisattva vow, and it's a recognition that we are interconnected. Thich Nhat Hanh calls it we are interbeing with each other, and you can appreciate that in just the recognition that like all of the causes and conditions that go into making you from the physical experience of your body is made of other elements, is shared. Like, and take the example of just the breath and how we're reliant on the trees in order to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, and the different elements of our bodies. When our bodies break down after death, we'll return to the earth, we'll return to soil. And then, also, so that's the physical experience of the body, our physical bodies. And we can talk about so many other ways that our bodies are created, are intercreated with other beings, I mean, including eating food, right? But then there's also the experience of our thoughts and our mind and our emotions, and how so much of what we think, what we believe is inherited or is learned, is passed on to us through our family members, but then also through our culture, through our society, through the books that we've read, through the practices that we've learned. We're made of other beings, and how we think and relate to our minds, these habits that we've had since childhood, or maybe even have been passed on generations in a family line. So this interconnection is happening on many different levels of our being. And then it's something also that we can experience like right now in the present moments, that through the senses, we are interconnected to everything, everyone that's in our awareness. And so like if you're looking through your eyes, like right now, if you're looking at your computer, I'm part of your eyes. I'm part of your seeing. And whatever else you see, that's part of you. So if you look around your room, like your experience doesn't stop here, right? It's not like your body. I mean, we say that like, oh, this is the end of my body, but like your awareness contains the entire, can contain the entire room, or can contain a single object if that's what you're focused on. So through our awareness, we are interbeing with all these other beings. And that's true through sound, that's true through our eyes, so true through our ears, through our eyes, through our skin, what we feel, the air is touching us, and that's part of our experience, it's part of who we are. And then through our thoughts and our memories. So in a single moment, we are a coming together of all of this information and all of this experience. And so you could say, and we say this in Dharma, like, this is our world. Whatever we're paying attention to is our world. And our world can be very expansive if we let our awareness get big. And our world can be very narrow. And that's something that we can learn to work with in Dharma practices, of just opening this aperture of awareness. But I'm talking about this in the context of compassion. because there's a togetherness in our experience. And I think we've been habituated to think of me as my feelings, like the internal experience is me, my feelings, my body sensations, my emotions, my thoughts, and then everything else that's outside is not me, is other. And we can have that experience to a greater and lesser degree. There's gradations of that. Sometimes we can feel deep intimacy with another human being. And then sometimes we can feel a lot of separation between ourselves and another human being. So in Dharma practice, we're learning to, one, just like recognize that we are interpermeating with the world, and then connecting to that on a heart level. And the more we're able to bring and to feel into the compassion that's inherent in that, and having that compassion for our inner experience, you'll see that like what is inside is also outside. And so what we react to internally, we often react to externally, or vice versa. Like when somebody's talking loud, sometimes I have this like inner experience of like, you shouldn't be doing that. But I say that to myself too. So it's like I'm trying to silence them out there. I get reactive with them out there, but I'm also doing that to myself. And so that's another aspect of this coming to know ourselves and coming to be ourselves completely, is bringing space first, that openness to just see what's happening, and then also meeting whatever's happening internally with loving presence. And then next, after we work with compassion, I'll talk about curiosity, and those go together. If we have a baseline in compassion and in kindness, then we can be curious about what's happening without trying to like get rid of it with our curiosity or analyze it away, but to like, oh, like things open in loving attention, things stay around, things are willing to loosen up and transform. So we're working with this quality of loving presence as a way of beginning to get to know ourselves and get to know the apparent other, and see this seamlessness in our experience. It doesn't mean we're always permeable. There's, like I said, we can open and close that aperture of awareness. And we can have firm boundaries that come from love. And that's something we can continue to learn and hone with more and more skillfulness as we practice Dharma. So I'd like to do a meditation exploring compassion. And first, I'm curious if anyone has any questions about any of that. So for this meditation, if you'd like to lie down, you're welcome to do that, or sit in a way where you can be just comfortable in your body. So sometimes I think we can sit in postures in meditation where we think, oh, this is a position where I'll be alert and then I'll get what I want from meditation. And part of what we're exploring this weekend or today in this retreat is we're just noticing some of the fixed beliefs that we might have around practice and bringing just some openness to that. So for this meditation, I really want to work with this quality of compassion, and specifically also like bringing compassion to ourselves and our own experience, and maybe parts of ourselves that show up in meditation that we often wish would go away or have a more antagonistic relationship to, is bringing that forward. And seeing if we can send some love to those parts. So please sit in a way that's comfortable for you. And we'll take about a minute or two to shift into meditation posture, and then we'll begin the meditation period. And I'll begin with a bell, and you can allow this bell to resonate and follow the bell into presence. Beginning by relaxing into the physical experience of the body. And bringing openness and compassion to the different parts of the body. Compassion is an embodied experience. Dharma is an embodied practice. And sometimes the places where we have some friction are the places in the body that are uncomfortable, or maybe we have some judgment around. And so I'm going to guide just a quick but gentle body scan to begin, and see if you can, as we approach each part of the body, bring openness and compassion to those parts. And starting with openness, that's one of the foundations of compassion. And beginning by becoming aware of the sensations that make up your head. And perhaps noticing how you feel towards those sensations. And see if you can, even using the breath, like breathe in some openness around those sensations. And then connecting with kindness, gratitude, or compassion for this part of your body we call head. Bringing awareness specifically to your face. And it's just like meeting the sensations in your face as best you can, fresh. Perhaps noticing places of tension, places where you might have judgment or beliefs about. And see if you can, with the inhalation, breathe in a little bit of space or openness around that experience of your face, around those sensations, beliefs. And then inviting compassion, kindness towards this part of your body. Maybe in the form of gratitude. And then bringing attention to the sensations that make up your brain. And noticing whatever thoughts might come up around those sensations or judgment. And see if you can bring openness or space to that experience. And meet that experience with loving presence, compassion, gratitude. And feeling the sensations in your neck and throat. And noticing if there's any judgment about those sensations. Making space for whatever comes up. Including space around thoughts about this meditation. And see if you can bring compassion to all the parts that show up as you bring attention to the sensations in your neck and throat. Making space for them, embracing them with kindness and loving presence. And as you do that, just notice if anything shifts or changes. And bringing awareness to the sensations in your shoulders. And same practice, noticing what comes up as you make that shift. And see if you can bring space for all the thoughts, beliefs, sensations. And abiding in loving presence. And bringing awareness to your arms and hands and each finger. Noticing what thoughts come up. If there's distraction, noticing distraction. There's boredom, noticing boredom. There's judgment or resistance, noticing that. And see if you can hold the sensations of your arms, hands, fingers, and the thoughts, the beliefs, the emotions that come up as you do this with space and loving presence. And noticing the sensations in the back of your body, mid back, upper back, lower back. Noticing the thoughts or beliefs that come up. And see if you can bring a spirit of loving presence, compassion, gratitude to your back, but also the beliefs and thoughts. Not trying to get rid of anything. And bringing awareness to the front of your body, chest, heart center, abdomen. Perhaps feeling the sensations that make up the breath. And again, bringing space for all of the thoughts, the beliefs, the resistances. Being with this part of your body, which is often a vulnerable part, with loving presence. And bringing awareness to your seat, legs and feet, each toe. And again, noticing any thoughts or judgments, resistances that ever comes up. And being with this part of your body, this spacious, loving presence. Now opening to the entire felt sense of your body. And when we do that, often the awareness gets a little more diffuse. Feeling the perhaps aliveness of your body. And see if you can connect to the preciousness of this body, the body you have received for this lifetime. You may wish to place your hand on your heart center or your abdomen. And see if you can just stay connected to that preciousness of this life right here, right now, arising as the sensations in the body, some movement of the breath, as whatever thoughts or emotions are present. What if right here, right now, all parts of you were welcome? Notice what might come up when I offer that suggestion. If right here, right now, everything was okay, just as it is. And if resistance comes up, or argument, can you allow that? Can you hold that part in compassion? Can you show that part your compassion? Resting in, abiding in loving presence. And we'll continue this for another 10 minutes. If you need to adjust your posture at any time, please feel free. And if you find it difficult to just rest in loving presence, connecting with one of the meditation methods that you use And bringing loving presence to the meditation method. And whatever arises, can you love that? Can you see that whatever arises is trying to help you, protect you, keep you safe? It might not be the most skillful strategy. Perhaps it's the best that that part of you can do. And can you offer it compassion? And just see what happens as you're with more of yourself in compassion. Whatever arises, can you love that? Letting yourself be held in loving presence. And then opening your awareness, if you'd like, and calling forward someone in your life who you care for. Imagine connecting with them in loving presence. Seeing all their difficulties and challenges through the eyes of loving presence. Compassion, gratitude. And so you can gently begin to transition out of meditation, connecting again to loving presence as you do this. And we'll now take a little longer break. I'd like to take a 20-minute break, so be back at 10 after. Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay, great. I'd like to take a 20-minute break, so be back at 10 after the hour. And as we go on this longer break, we're kind of midway through the retreat. Continue to be with these two qualities of openness and loving presence, and take in beauty and see if there's like anything with that kind of open-ended prompt. See if there's anything that touches your heart and continues to nurture this quality of loving presence. Where do you find beauty? And so we'll be back, like I said, at 10 after the hour, and you're welcome to stay in the room. And I'll see you soon. come up around the last meditation that either of you want to bring forward?
I was noticing there was a part of the practice when you mentioned becoming more aware of the preciousness, or yeah, I think that's the word you used, of our aliveness. And I was kind of blown away by how like instantly that seemed to translate to other living things after having done that for myself. Just going, like, stepping outside for a moment during the break, the plant life that was in my awareness, it took a much different like it had a different presence than usually when I see the trees that are nearby. So I was like, wow, like it seemed, it like is like a channel that goes both ways. And that was, I was like, this is nice. And I was also thinking about how similarly, like with doing this from home and being on Zoom, it's a chance to inhabit the space that I'm always living in a really, like, with different attention and in a more like mindful way, and how much room there is for change in that realm too. So yeah, um, and I had a slice of bread. I was like, this is the beauty. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah. That's I mean, there's that quality of non-separation, like as we cultivate love. Like I have this teacher, Ayakema, who's a Vipassana teacher. She said love doesn't really know any direction. So if you're like, some people get a little like reactive about like, oh, I shouldn't be cultivating loving kindness for myself. Like this is about like other beings. And she's like, oh no, it's all the same anyway. Like if you practice just appreciating your own life, like that is going to open up because your heart is settled and at peace within yourself, and then you'll just see through those eyes. And it's a real amazing gift, I think, the gift of loving presence, because it does just go both ways. There are no, maybe there is, it's breaking down the barrier that there is this like outside me. Yeah.
I think that's relevant to the experience that I did. I did spent the full morning meditation before this doing metta. And I always have this experience when I do metta for like consistently for a while where I'm like, this is the best thing ever that anybody's ever invented. Why don't I do this all the time? And then I go back to like my primary practice, and I think it's partially because of kind of what you just said, where I'll do metta for a while and I'll think I'm solving one problem, and then 20 other like weird other like loops I've gotten into my mind just get untangled in the process that I didn't realize were actually just about like love or lack of love. Like I make it seem like there's all of this other stuff going on that's actually just various versions of me like judging myself or me judging other people or all this stuff that if you add metta, and then it just seeps into everything and like softens everything. It's so it's easy to forget.
I think it's easy to forget, and it's easy to mistrust. Similar to what you were talking about just like sitting in open presence, Shikantaza. Like I think it's these simple practices that like get kind of to the root of our being. They're hard to trust, especially when the mind gets tangled and is complicated. It's like, oh well, my mind is complicated, I need to do something complicated to fix it. Or at least there might be a belief like that in there somewhere. Or something that's so simple just seems just like too radical to trust.
I find like concentration feels like heroic. There's some part of my ego that like loves it. It's like I'm breaking through reality, just seeing everything clearly. But yeah, a lot gets tangled in it.
Yeah, I would like, my question that came up was like, oh, who loves concentration? The ego? Or the part of the ego that's like, oh, I'm getting something from this. Which isn't bad. I mean, totally, that isn't bad.
I think there's this little heroic meditator ideal that like it's just always, I'm always like comparing myself to, and that one's always doing concentration practice for some reason. We're deep in jhana or something.
I don't know, it's good to have that part. Like the Buddha's story is definitely told as a story of the hero's journey. Like to have that part, that like warrior part, that's like, there's always more to see. And I think the shadow side of a shikantaza practice can be getting a little lazy with it. Like, oh, this is all there is. It's not true. Like there's always more to see in just deepening and releasing, but we can kind of ride the surface with that. Like, oh, this is all there is. Like, I'm just present. I don't even need to meditate anymore. I can kind of slip down that slope. But again, like that's a part of the ego that takes over. It's good to recognize. Yeah.
Kisei, can I ask? I'm curious that like when you're doing Zen practice, have you come across like practices like we've done with loving presence in the body or loving kindness practices in the Zen tradition, or are you always sort of incorporating like complementary practices? Or I think I noticed like when you mentioned interbeing and Zen practice as like the source of working with compassion. I'm just curious, like if you're like thinking it through a Zen mindset, where's the like loving kindness, compassion practiced, as opposed to just like thought through or like taught? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. My teacher Chosen definitely like went to the Pali Canon and like unearthed the Metta Sutta and was like, this is really important to be practiced in a Zen center. Just like after her experience with a more kind of macho Zen that was like breakthrough oriented, which was how she would talk about her experience at CCLA in like the 70s and early 80s. So she really felt like she had to bring loving kindness from the other traditions. And she learned, she studied with Ajahn Amaro for a while, and she worked with a Tibetan teacher for a while to learn Tonglen, and just like slowly incorporated her own version through her understanding of Zazen into the Zen tradition. For the first like 9 years of the monastery, we chanted the Metta Sutta every night as a way of just like affirming that side, because she felt like Zen can definitely skew towards the cool side. Now, practicing in Japan, I think like so much compassion is understood and appreciated in parts of it that I think are harder for Westerners to connect with and to see as acts of compassion. So like the bowing and, the way that we like fluff up our cushion and like, bow to the cushion and bow to the person across from you. And the service, which is really a celebration of interconnection and a celebration and connection to ancestors and to land. Like a lot of that is just so subtle and so cultural that I think it didn't get translated in a way that we might see it as compassion as we walk into a Zen center, or even if we've been practicing Zen for a number of years. So I do think it's very, very implicit in the tradition, and the founders of Zen in Japan, Dogen Zenji and Keizan Zenji are really considered the founders, speak so much about compassion and about interconnection, but it has this kind of like cool, subtle, and hidden way that it's not as like warm and obvious as like I think we as Westerners like appreciate love. And I don't know if that's like because there's so much like Judeo-Christian influence, or just the way like the psyche is, that there's like so much longing for love and to be loved in our culture. And yeah, so I don't quite understand that. It's really hard to understand like how a religion, like, because Zen is, Buddhism is a religion, and as much as it's a set of practices for awakening, and a set of practices that have like deep philosophical underpinnings, it's hard to understand like how a religion gets like actually translated into another culture. And I think we're like experiencing that, and we're seeing this combination of a lot of different traditions coming together to give us a more robust and rounded out experience. And there are, shadow sides to that, which a number of academics have pointed out. And I also think there's something potentially really beautiful about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, sometimes I look at like the Zen teachers, especially Dogen Zenji, especially like in the middle of a sesshin that I'm leading, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all about compassion. It's always been all about compassion. Sometimes I just don't see that, because the forms can, especially some of the ways we can embody the forms in Zen can feel very like rule bound, like you must do it this way, and you wear these clothes and step with this foot, and we can get caught up in like, am I doing it right, or is that person doing it right? And then the forms lose like the magic of compassion and interconnection and gratitude, which they were, I think, originally intended to embody, and harmony. I mean, harmony is such a big component of Japanese culture and the Zen tradition, and what it means to be in harmony, I think, is a value that isn't really an American value. So we might not even see that as compassion.